Hi, good morning. This is day 41 of the Daily Spark questions. And this one says, where do I assume that understanding must precede change? Where do I assume that understanding must precede change? This one can go so deep. It's gone deep and pervasive throughout my life, I feel like. I've always been in this very mind heavy. Um, just talking to my husband about this morning over coffee. I was like, I don't know why this thought came up, but I was like, you know, this is me quoting research that I have no idea where the research came from, but I've heard so many different fields of study quote this statistic that I'm like, oh, it must be true. So we only use 5% of our brain capacity. But really what I think it's saying, what I've heard is like we're only consciously aware and have the capacity for 5%, like to be aware of 5% of the goings ons. Like we can only use like the cognitive mind, let's say, is only 5% of our total capacity. 95% is in the subconscious or unconscious. I still get those confused sometimes in different contexts. So let's just say everything that's not conscious is 95%. And those are all of our unconscious behaviors and drivers that really are responsible for, well, 95% of our lived experience. 5% is the ego self saying like, I know everything, I'm so smart, this is what I should do, this is how I should feel, this is that, this is this, and that is that, Little Mermaid throwback. But so we were talking about that this morning, and it makes me think about how that 5% through my whole life has been so smart and like figuring shit out. But I've been also a highly intuitive person too, but also relying a little too much on the 5% versus the 95%. And so where do I assume that understanding must precede change? I hate to use the word always, and I hate to use the word hate. Ugh, stop already. So that 5% is the understanding to me that this is talking about, like the cognitive awareness and connecting the dot and meaning making that 5% does feels bigger than 5%. It feels so important. It feels like, oh, that's truth. That's everything. And that understanding, I had to like figure stuff out from a cognitive perspective. If you want to call it left brain versus right brain, you could do that too. There's like conscious, subconscious, left, right. It's all pointing to the same underlying thing. And so I think that I always felt like I had to understand something before I could make the change or shift into a new direction, because I had to figure out like, well, what's it all about? Is it worth it? I had to think my way into a new way of acting, even though that proves time and again futile. Like, oh, I gotta muster up the motivation to make this change, and then the ego self gets involved and shames the self for like not being motivated enough and not doing the things you should do, and when really I think they prove time and again that you can act yourself into a new way of thinking or being. It's like, do the thing. Get your logical mind, that ego brain, out of the way. Try to silence it in whatever way works for you, like meditation, connecting in nature. However you bring that 5%, the loudness of that 5% down a bit so that the 95% can become more and come into more of our awareness, then that's what I mean by flowing into a new way of being or acting or thinking versus like top down. This feels like bottom up. There's so many parallels with different modalities, different schools of thought, different fields of study. They all are pointing to this same thing. It's like So anyway, I used to always assume that I had to understand things and follow that top-down approach before I would make a change in my life, and I had to feel aligned in the way that alignment felt to me before, which was like, oh, it makes sense. And I can see, I can perceive out in a future point in time, the fruits of this labor will be worth it, will be worth the journey of making this change. Like everything had to be efficient, logical, worth it, like and it was very time bound. That there's that aspect of like the way my brain would work through like problem solving, and yet also being highly intuitive with that, like those deep knowings. And I think that's why a lot of the times, with this being so loud, that 5% being so loud most of my life, and then this feeling of the 95%, like knowing it's there but trying to like silence it and let this be louder, I always felt that internal tug of war. And I think that's that's a big part of it, is like, wait a minute, I should have been silencing this so that this could get louder, and then that's where I could feel more in true alignment with those deepest knowings versus like figuring stuff out. So like understanding. And now I feel like I've somehow, something shifted over the last little while. It's always hard to pinpoint these things because it's not like a line in the sand. There are different lines in the sand, different doors. Like it's been a progression of turning a corner in this particular way of like, oh, trusting the universe, whatever you want to call it. Like I don't have to understand everything first before I try something or do something or allow myself to feel different. And the trust that's been building is like, all shall be revealed in due time. Or this too shall pass. Like all those little sayings we have, there's feels like a truth to everything really, but those resonate more with me these days. It's like I don't need to stress about having to understand everything before I change, before I make a change, before I perceive a change. Because sometimes that understanding is the resistance, the friction that keeps a change from happening. So that's what this one makes me think of. Let's see if there's anything else. Where do I assume that understanding must precede change? So again, does it want me to get specific? Do I still feel like I have to understand something before making a change? Well, I'm trying, like, there's a lot lately that feels like I'm more aware of when this is loud. Like this morning, I just went and laid back down for more like 20 minutes. No, it was 38 minutes because I set an alarm and it said you have 38 minutes. And you could call it meditation, I guess. It was just like being still. And so much came up, like from that 95%. So that's happening more and more lately, where I'm just like, oh, let's just be still. There's no rush. There's nothing to figure out. There's nowhere to be. All will be revealed. And maybe in the past couple weeks, I've been spending less time on social media. I'm also doing a detox of subscription TV, like Netflix and like all those types of things that I'm just like retraining my habits this month. Where like I'm having a hot flash. Whew. Why does that happen every time? Well, I have like one an hour, so it's bound to happen. So feeling like, oh, I just have that 5% is just the monkey mind. It's trainable. It's a habitual, novelty-seeking little animal. So why don't I just use that to my advantage and train it like it's an animal, right? So that this stuff can bubble up through those, um, through the rewiring. And so I feel like, wow, it's not taking long to see like substantial, like felt, embodied shifts in awareness, perception, embodiment by doing these little simple monkey mind retrainings. It's so fun too. It's like, oh wait, here I am, this letting this think it's so smart for so long, like it's got it all under control and it knows what I need and knows what to do, and in some extent it's very useful that way. It makes lists, it gets shit done. And then I'm like, oh wait, all I have to do is like create structure around these retrainings. Like, oh, I'll set an intention to detox from distraction, to detox from numbing out, to detox from um, dissociation, because that comes in all forms. It doesn't just look like, where'd she go? It's like dissociating through, like, letting these tools co-opt my presence. It's like, wait a minute. And I felt this morning too, in that 38 minutes, which is more like 28 because I stopped early because gotta get shit done. But it was like, I felt this power. I'm like, whoa, what's happening? It was like a full body, like, sense of alive, raw power come back. I don't know how else to describe it. And I was like, oh shit, that was cool. And so, like, and then I thought about the word coherence, and that made me think, like, when I put this under, like, I'm relating it back to this because it's all about that understanding piece of the brain. Like, it's got to make sense, wow, when I just try to silence that, and I prove it over and over again every time I do a meditative practice or just a stillness practice, I'm like, oh man, there's so much waiting to, like, make coherence in the body, between mind and body. It's all one thing. Like, they should just, like, call it mind body or some new word. There probably is a word I'm not thinking of, but I don't like separating the two anymore. But it's like, when I just get this 5% of the understanding machine silenced, whoa. And it's like, I think in the past I've always kind of been skeptical of when people talk about meditation, because I'm like, what do you mean? What is it? Show me what it looks like. And I've practiced so many different forms. Now I'm, like, coming around to my own, the way I like to meditate, and it changes all the time. But I'm like, oh, there are literally countless forms of meditation. So I get skeptical when somebody sticks a flag in something and says, this is the ultimate of whatever, whether it's meditation, a form of energy work, a form of healing modality, a form of anything. It's like, well, it worked for you because that was a good alignment, a good fit for you with what you needed in that moment. This one's a good one for me, and this one's a good one for them. There's truth in everything. That's why the 5% gets very skeptical about, what do they mean by this? Because I'm not buying into something, you know what I mean? There's, like, this is also the skeptical machine that I'm trying to silence, because underneath it all, I viscerally know there's truth in everything. Like, everything is true at some level for me in a certain moment, So it's like, and this one's like, so there's that too. It's like, trying to understand something keeps me from making change, because there's, like, a little rebel in there that thinks it's so much smarter than other people, saying, like, I don't think you think you know what you think that means. Like, it's like this whole skeptic little rebel of, like, But really this part knows like, oh, I'll buy into everything. Oh yeah. Like little bits of everything, not the whole thing, because then it's dogma. But like I'm going to make my own little recipe. And that's what feels true to me versus like buying into the whole thing. So that's another thing that has kept me from making certain changes. So that's the flip side of this is like this the 5% for me is also the skeptic. It's also that highly independent little rebel, independent thinking little rebel. Like it thinks it's so smart. And so anyway, that's I think I'm done. I think that's all that I that needed to be said, I guess. What about you? I thought when I first read this was like, oh, simple little question, but it took me on a journey.